Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh no, thank you for chatting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, congratulations on a fantastic movie and a great score too.
Oh, thank you.
I assume it's a great feeling to not only still be able to talk about it, but also see how it continues to resonate with so many people even months after its release.
Yeah, it really is. And I was actually saying that to a friend earlier today because it's like, you work so hard on something and it's such a huge part of your life and it comes out and then you just feel like it's just kind of gone and it's like a weird feeling. So it's really, really nice to see that it's just having another second wind and that people are discovering it. And yeah, it feels really lovely.
Were you familiar at all with the story of Trudy Ederle before you joined the movie?
No, not at all. And I don't think anybody was. Like, I don't think any of the filmmakers were. Um, and I think that was one of the driving forces for all of us was just to try and bring this story to people's attention because it was like she'd been kind of like forgotten in time. Like there was just no, she's not a name that you're kind of there's spoken about at school or in all of those amazing books about women. She's always seems to be left out. And I couldn't, when I saw that footage of the parade, I mean, I just couldn't believe that I'd never heard this woman's name. And this is relatively recent, it's not even that long ago.
Was there anything that struck you the most when you found out, more about her story and the journey she went through?
I mean, just all of it, but more and more as it kind of reveals itself, the just the fact that she actually managed to do it. But I suppose the context of the time where women weren't even allowed to swim in a public swimming pool, and the idea that she had this idea and belief in herself that she could do something so difficult that at the time very few men had even successfully managed it. So I guess it's just like, where does that spirit come from? Where does that spark in her come from? And I found that really fascinating. And then all the other stuff that happens on the way, the sabotage and the fact that she kind of has to do it twice. And yeah, it's just an extraordinary story. I mean, it really is.
I did speak to the director of the movie last month, Joachim Roning, and he talked about how important it was for the music to have a pretty big role in this movie. I'm wondering if you can talk about your collaboration with him and if he had a specific way in which he wanted to utilize the music for this film.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons the film was such a joy for me to work on was because there are big sequences and parts of the film that the music is really telling the story and that you're really being, I was really handed the film and it was like, we need to know what's happening because she's in the water a lot and there are long periods of time where you don't see her face. And so the music really had to be telling a story or, you know, giving the emotion because I think it's challenging, when you can't see your main character for some of the most important parts of the film. We talked about that a lot and about how for certain moments the score was going to be the main kind of narrative tool, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, I really loved working with Joachim. We had a great. I think we all collectively felt this responsibility towards Trudy and getting it right. So, it was hard, really hard at times, and there were disagreements, but they all came from a really good place of us wanting to do her justice and tell her story. And I think that Joachim really loves music and it's really important to him. And we all were on the same page. It was just, then it was just kind of executing it, I suppose.
And it's very interesting in the movie how they represent swimming. There's a certain rhythm to it, there's a certain musicality to it, just the way in which Trudy swims. I think there's a scene in the movie where Charlotte at the beginning explains to Trudy that her arms and legs,
Mm,
sorry, should kick at 28 beats per minute, like music.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
wondering if that sort of fed into how the score was going to be composed for those specific scenes.
Yes, it did. And that was one of the first thoughts that I had when I read the script was the 28 beats per minute. I thought that's got to be our tempo. And so I think that was the kind of the tempo matched the art, the strokes for all of the swimming sequences, or the more the races, the more propulsive moments. Because I think, yeah, that they had to be in rhythm with each other, I think. Otherwise it would have felt weird.
And is there a way to sort of represent this rhythm through, sequences, especially at the beginning where she competes and the tension's very, very high?
I think finding the right music, the right cue, which we ended up calling the race for the races and for the more athletic sides of the swimming, was really important and quite hard because you're competing with water, which is really noisy. So you have this white noise of splashing and so it was trying to find frequencies and tones and things that would kind of push through all of that noise. And actually the electric cello ended up being really important, and that was a really key piece of those sequences because it just gave everything this pulse, um, that would stay present throughout, even if there was a lot of noise and other stuff happening. I felt like that just gave us a really good, yeah, pulse and propulsion. And then lots and lots of percussion was really key as well. So just trying to get those, and bass, and have those lower tones so that you're feeling the music, um, even through all the white noise of the swimming. So there, yeah, I think those were the things that really helped.
I also find it pretty interesting. I saw the movie when it came out on Disney Plus because it never had a theatrical release in my country, unfortunately. But I remember being very sort of blown away by how the cinematography and the editing were perfectly in sync with the score, which gave a specific rhythm to it. I don't know if that influenced also how the movie was scored, or I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we all worked together really closely. So Una as the incredible editor, and Joachim, and that was all very orchestrated, and particularly on the big swimming sequences there was lots of back and forth and making sure that everything was really lining up, lots of just refining it and refining it and making sure that it was all just perfectly in sync for those, particularly for those sequences.
And in the first half of the movie, we mostly see the joy that swimming brings to Trudy, especially when she begins to win. And we see this montage. She wins pretty much every competition that she's been a part of. And then
Hmm.
swimming becomes far more dangerous and horrific when she goes through that, English Channel swim. Was there a specific balancing act that you wanted to represent between the first two halves, the two halves of the movie?
Yeah, I guess in some ways I saw it in three acts, and I think that for me, I always the moment where she runs into the water for the second attempt, for her second swim, where the journalists find out and they're chasing her across the beach, and she jumps in and she's smiling, and that is the last act. And I kind of feel like everything really turns, the music really turns for me in that moment. And it just, I guess, the scope gets bigger, everything gets more epic, everything gets more emotional, and there's no holding back anymore. Whereas I feel like, because this the first time she attempts to swim the channel has to feel really exciting, and you can't presume that everybody knows the story, so you don't want to give it you want it to feel like she's going to do it and this is very exciting. But I also knew that she doesn't, and that we have to save that real joy and triumph and suspense for the second time, the second attempt. So I suppose there was a bit more restraint in the earlier parts of the film, and trying to just pace where we were at because there's so much to come. So I think that was quite challenging, just getting that pacing right. And you're right, at the beginning when she's learning to swim and it's with her sister, and there's a playfulness, there's a lightness to all of it, it's fun. And I suppose when she goes to the Olympics is when that all turns, and I feel like that's when she gets her first real knock, and defeat. And I think she feels responsible, and she realizes that actually that losing those races had a profound effect on women everywhere. And I think that's when that seed's planted of what could I do to readdress the balance? How can I do something meaningful that will change this? Because I think she took that very personally, and took the responsibility of them cancelling swimming from the Olympics, for women. So I think, yeah, that's probably when the film starts to, I think when Trudy's journey starts to change.
And how do you make sure that the music always stays in service of Trudy's story from, her childhood when she was afflicted by measles to, the
Mhm.
final scene where she overcomes, all the challenges of swimming the English Channel and actually accomplishes that feat?
So we ended up with a few different Trudy themes, and I think that in the initial discussions we were all in agreement that we needed a Trudy theme, and she needed a great theme, and that would be the starting point, and that would be really the core of the music and the score. Um, and so when I wrote her main theme, it worked and everyone was really happy, but it also wasn't enough. And then we kind of realized, but there's so many different aspects to Trudy. She's not just one thing. She's not just an athlete. She's not just a sportswoman. She's not just doing this kind of exciting, powerful swimming. She's also a sister and a daughter, and she's from this very, very close family, and she's surrounded by love, and then the other side is that she's young, she's 19, she's a bit of a rebel, and she's mischievous, and she's got a fun side, and she's kind of not like the other girls, her contemporary. She's different. And I think so ultimately we ended up with three different themes that were just for Trudy, to try and, I guess, flesh out her character, and reflect, that all the different parts of her.
And you mentioned the second swim to be sort of the final act of the movie. And there are many scenes in that final act where there's no music and we let the scene play out on itself. And there's also some other scenes, like I think when she swims through a field of jellyfish, the music's
Oh,
very present and it accompanies her emotionally. I'm wondering if you can talk about working on that scene, and also, how did you, choose which moments to put music in and which ones to not have any music in that whole final act?
that again, it was a trial and error process, and I think we knew that the last 15 minutes was going to be very music heavy. There was just from her bit getting lost, and that whole sequence with the fires and the beach, and then the swim, and then she gets there, and then there's the celebration, and then there's the New York parade, and then there's the archive footage. So there's a good 15 minutes of, so we were very aware, and it's something that, Joachim and would talk about a lot, was how we don't want to like kill the audience with music. We want it to still feel um meaningful, and to still feel like it's effective, it's affecting and effective. um so I think whenever there was an opportunity to not have music, and to have some quiet and some still, we definitely, tried that. And then sometimes there were sequences that we tried that, and actually it just really felt better with music. And so some things came and went and changed. The jellyfish, I think, always had to have some music, because to just, I guess, make it feel, just more treacherous, more suspenseful, more scary, and then ultimately more triumphant when she makes it. And it was, yeah, it was a cool sequence to score. I really enjoyed doing that one, actually.
And is there anything that you would say as a composer was the most rewarding aspect of working on this movie?
Um, I would say definitely working with Jerry, because, I think if you look at his track record for music and scores, it's just kind of extraordinary. And having worked with him, I can see why, because, that's not an accident. Um, he is incredibly involved. He loves the scoring process. and he loves melody, and he loves uh tunes, and that was just so incredibly rewarding and wonderful to write in that way, and to have um him respond to things, and he was always so clear about what he wanted. And so I think kind of getting to experience working with him, getting to watch how he works, how he makes decisions, how he thinks about the film and the story, was just a total yeah, I just felt very lucky. I kind of was pinching myself a lot.
Awesome. Well, it was really great talking today, Amelia, on your score for Young Woman and the Sea. Congratulations once again. The score is absolutely phenomenal, and the film is fantastic.
Oh wow, thank you. That really does mean a lot. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Cool.
and wish you all the best on the upcoming award season, and hope that you have a very good rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.